am Rachel Kimball. I'm going to be one of your co-moderators tonight. I am from Carondelet High School, and as I told you, I'm tuning in from Antioch, California. I've been with Sustainable Leaders in Action since my freshman year, wow, and I am now a junior. I absolutely love volunteering with them, and this is my go-to job. I love being a moderator. I also love acting and science, so that kind of all comes together in this climate careers chat, which I love being a part of. And now I'm going to hand it over to our wonderful other co-moderator, Rohan. Take it away.
Hello, my name is Rohan Tyagi, and I am the other co-moderator this evening. I'm a sophomore at Heritage High School, and I have been a member and now intern of SLIA for around 10 months. I joined because of the climate rally last March, and I enjoy environmental policy and all forms of earth science. In my free time, I enjoy playing the cello and learning languages. Now, for a special welcome to our co-host for this event, the Contra Costa Library. Let's give some claps for them in the chat. Here representing them tonight is one of our fabulous librarians, Dean, and him and Ellie, I presume, will be talking a little bit about the library.
Thank you. The Contra Costa County Library is happy to connect with you and your resources, services, and materials for all 26 of our branches. Access more than 1 million physical items, including international language collections and thousands of digital materials 24/7 at ccclib.org. Visit any library to use our public computers, printers, and free Wi-Fi. You can also visit one of our branches with laptops for on-site use or check out our Wi-Fi hotspot for 3 weeks. Contra Costa County Library's adult literacy program trains and supports volunteers, tutors to deliver basic literary instruction to adults throughout the county. Visit our website and sign up for our digital library card today. And now that commercial is over, on with the program.
You got one more.
Oh, I think that was basically, maybe I went through it too fast, but I'll let the content speak for itself because I've run out of stuff to say.
Oh yeah, I personally love free stuff. Libraries are full of free stuff. It's kind of my go-to. So on to our amazing panelists that we have yet to introduce you to. Our two very amazing women here with us tonight, Soumya Suresh and Christina Schwandt, have joined us as panelists for this event, and we are extremely excited to hear all about them. But first, we're going to play a little game of two truths and a lie to get to know our first panelist, Soumya Suresh, a staff wildlife biologist at Sequoia Ecological Consulting. Now go ahead and try to guess which of the fun facts is a lie and which is the truth. And I'm going to have Soumya herself read them out to all of y'all.
And before she does, in the chat, which one do you think, which one of these three facts do you think is the lie?
All right, while everyone's guessing, Soumya, why don't you read them out?
Sure. Yeah, two truths and a lie. Hi, everyone. First is I have moved around 12 times before I turned, I'm sorry, I need to move this. Oh, there we go. I moved around 12 times before I turned 12 years old. And then the second one is I have been within 5 feet of a California condor. And then the third one is I have worked with and handled every single sensitive species in California.
These are all pretty good. Oh my gosh, a California condor, that'd be dangerous. And working with every single sensitive species in California, I don't know. But I haven't seen the answers to these folks, so I really don't know. This is interesting. This has got to be a good one. All right, let's see what people are saying. The third one, exactly. I agree, Kyle. There's no way. But maybe number two. And the third one, okay, people are thinking the third one, the last one. Yeah, we've got a lot of that. 12 times before 12 years old. That's every year though, so that's also unlikely. So I don't know, it could go either way. We don't know. All right, get your last guesses in the chat right now. And we're gonna find out. Okay, last guesses really fast. Okay, so I think the majority is number 3. But Soumya, tell us, which is the lie?
It is number 3. I have not worked with and handled every single sensitive species in California. That is, it would be immense, but I hope to one day.
But you have been within 5 feet of a California condor. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we went for a little field trip into Big Sur, where the Ventana Wilderness, essentially, I think it's a nonprofit, and they rehabilitate California condors out there in Big Sur. So they're one of the spots that rehabilitate them after they've gotten lead poisoning. And we went out there to do some restoration work as a company, and we were able to just like hang out with the condors that were just hanging out in those hills and up in like these big mountains, and they were immensely beautiful and immensely large and kind of scary, but it was really cool to see them because they are majestic birds.
That is crazy. You've heard it here, folks. She was hanging out with a condor. That is insane. Okay. Oh, my screen is wigging out again. And my video won't start. You know what? It will in a minute though. Right now, it's a kind of good timing because we're about to take a little break. Thank you, Soumya. And we're going to give you all an opportunity to hear about SLIA and Skilco's very own Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge.
Oh, we are actually going to hear from Soumya before that, but the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge is very exciting, so hold on to your seats.
All right. I believe this is my cue. I will share my screen. Is that good? All right. Awesome. Let me share my screen. Share. I'll start from the beginning. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. I am Soumya Suresh. I am a wildlife biologist, and I currently work for a consulting company in Walnut Creek. And so just to give you just like a general agenda of what I'll be talking about, I just have an introduction of what I'm doing right now, what I've done essentially like right after college, and then my education programs that I went to while I was doing my education, and then moments of importance, essentially their experiences or organizations that I've worked with that really helped me realize that I wanted to work with wildlife, and then any advice that I could humbly give you. And so, yeah, so starting off, that's me in the picture to the left. I'm holding an Alameda whipsnake. And it is, Alameda whipsnake is federally and state listed. It's listed under the Endangered Species Act. And it is essentially listed as threatened in the California Endangered Species Act and the Federal Endangered Species Act. So I was doing some Alameda whipsnake trapping a couple years ago. And I still do a little bit of it when I have the free time. And so I currently work as a biologist for a consulting company. And I also mentor high school students in an organization called ASDRP, which is short for Aspiring Scholars Directed Research Program, which is also a part of a nonprofit down in Fremont. And so my current job is to essentially work with construction companies and also work with organizations such as like Morinda or Moraga Orinda Fire District, state parks, and other sort of smaller organizations like local parks and things like that, to work with them and make sure that we are able to protect the sensitive species that are on their land. And so we work with a lot of sort of the compliance part of it. And by compliance, I mean that there are certain essentially laws and regulations that you have to follow when you're protecting a certain species. And a lot of that is enforced by biologists being on site and making sure that we're not hurting anything. If anything is hurt, we report it. And essentially being that on-site person to refer to in case there's any questions or concerns or anything comes up while people are working out there. So our job is to sort of work with people in different organizations and be that in between and go to make sure that when we're doing projects for construction or if we're doing any changes in parks, we're not hurting the animals and plants that live within those spaces. And so as a mentor for the high school students in ASDRP, I work with them doing environmental DNA projects and some plant genetics projects. I have a little bit of a background in molecular bio. So I kind of practice that interest by working with these students and helping them learn how to sort of have a interest and figure out how to kind of find their niche in environmental science. And it all doesn't have to be, you know, going out in the field. Sometimes it's just you are doing genetic work or you're getting samples from the field and processing them in labs. And so essentially that's what we work on with my students, and they have full control over the project. I am only there as like a guide for them, and they do the project. They go get data from the field, and then they actually do the lab work for it and write research papers on it. And so it's really cool to see that and be able to work with students in that way. And so I've been doing that since about 2019, and I have really enjoyed it. And so before I joined Sequoia, I was working for AmeriCorps, the National Park Service, up in Martinez, so pretty close to us, and in the John Muir National Historic Site. And we were doing Alameda whipsnake trapping, and I did that for about 2 seasons, which is about 2 summers. And I learned a lot over there. I mean, for one, if you ever have a chance to visit Mount Wanda, which is part of the John Muir National Historic Site, it's beautiful to hike, and around now it's probably going to be blooming. And I did that for about 1.5 years, and then I moved to Sequoia. And then jumping back farther back, right after college, I actually joined a plant genetics lab, which was doing agricultural research on figuring out how we can get our crops to be to grow better under conditions of stress and drought, which, you know, California is still facing. And so that is sort of my journey right after college and what I'm doing currently. And let's move on to education. So for education, I I grew up in Fremont, California, and I went to high school there, and then I went to college in UC Santa Barbara, and I did a BS in environmental studies. Funny story is that I actually was initially a medical major, but I essentially switched because I was like, I will not be happy within this major. So, you know, if you're in the position right now trying to figure out what your majors are, you can definitely switch at any point, or not any point, but at a reasonable point, you can definitely switch if you find that you like something else better. And I always had a penchant for working in environmental fields, but due to my essentially my parents and the community around me, I was geared more towards the medical field, but I'm thankful that I actually found a way to switch over to what I actually wanted to do. So I did a bachelor's in science, and I worked in a few labs there. I worked in a lab in Carolyn D'Antonio's lab, and she is a restoration scientist. If you don't know what restoration is, that is essentially going to wild spaces and returning them back to a native plant community rather than an invasive plant community. And then, so I worked for that lab, and I did a little bit of wildfire research for her. And then I moved on to working with grackles, which are these little birds. They're a little bit larger than sparrows. And we were doing behavioral studies on them to figure out, like, how did they respond to feeding behaviors? How did they respond to being in captivity and then being re-released, and how do they adjust in those sorts of situations? And then I went on to work for the River Lab, which is a lab that does biocontrol, which biocontrol essentially means that we will try to use a natural deterrent to control an invasive species. So when I was working in the River Lab, I started working with a bug called Brugada hilaris, which is a stink bug. And so we started doing experiments to see whether this bug was more attracted to certain types of chemicals versus what they weren't attracted to try to see if we can somehow create a synthetic chemical that they would be more attracted to in agricultural fields to draw them away from crops so they wouldn't destroy crops. And then I graduated, and then I went into working in the biotech lab, and I started my graduate certificate in wildlife management at Oregon State University in 2018. And that sort of rolled me into a master in natural resources that I could get at Oregon State. And now that's what I'm doing. So with the master's and the wildlife certificate, I was able to do projects in sudden oak death on Mount Wanda, and I am currently doing a project in juniper encroachment, which essentially is due to climate change. Juniper is starting to move lower into lower and lower altitudes into sage scrub habitat. And even though juniper is a native plant, it decimates native populations of sage scrubs. And so to figure out how to control that population, how to get junipers to not encroach on native sage scrub habitat is a bit of a challenge that the scientific community is trying to solve. And so I would say that my moments of importance for me were when I was about 12 or 13, I started to volunteer at the San Francisco Zoo as a nature trail volunteer. And that was essentially like, you know, if you're a 12-year-old and someone hands you a boa constrictor and they're like, here, hold the snake and tell people about it. It's the most exciting thing in the world. At least to me, it was. It was really exciting to me, and I loved doing that, and I loved telling people about it. And we had like armadillos and ferrets that would sleep on you all day if you were working with the ferrets. And so that was a really awesome experience for me. And I think they do take teenage volunteers currently for nature trail programs. And then I had a field course I did in Vancouver Island, Canada, where we went up to Vancouver Island, up to the northwestern tip of it. And we essentially were out in the wilderness for 2 weeks looking for animal scat, writing research papers about like bears and wolves and all the wildlife that was around, and also looking at the migrating gray whale population that was up there. And that was a really awesome experience. That was very, that essentially like helped gear me towards doing more field work. And then the John Muir National Historic Site, I talked about this earlier. Alameda whip snake in that picture right there. Really beautiful snakes, and they're just like, they're amazing. And the way that their population is so centered around just being in like the East Bay area is so interesting to me. And so that was an awesome project. And then I would say, like, moments of importance that come up from day to day for me is like, if I go on a hike in Briones, then like I'll come across, say, this California newt. And I saw this when we had the last rainstorm, and I went up in a hike to do a hike in Briones, and I just found this newt, and he was just crossing the trail, and just picked him up. Never pick up a newt with your bare hands. Always use some sort of gloves, because they do have some toxicity to them. And so that was just a beautiful moment for me. And I like to find different moments when I go hiking to just look at local wildlife and handle them carefully and safely, because I know how to handle them. And I would encourage you that if you don't know how to handle wildlife, do not, but definitely look at them and make sure that, you know, you're admiring their beauty. And so I think advice from me would be that local, state, national parks, regional parks, they always need volunteers. There's also local organizations that do wildlife rehab, and I think Christina is going to talk about this, so I'll let her talk about that. And then AmeriCorps, once you kind of become 18, it's a good way to sort of get your feet wet in field work, in any sort of wildlife or restoration work that you might want to do. And AmeriCorps is all over America, so you could literally go anywhere and do like a 6-month stint, or even like a over the summer stint, and figure out whether or not you like doing that type of work. And then when you're in school, definitely develop a rapport with your professors and learn the different opportunities. I went through so many labs in school because I was able to talk to my professors and say, like, hey, like, I'm looking for opportunities to work in labs. What do you have? Like, what can be interesting, or like what might have been interesting to me? And they were really good about kind of pointing me in the right direction, or including me in whatever they were doing in their labs. And so it definitely helps to sort of ask and be proactive about going up to your professors and letting them know what your interests are, or whatever interests you want to develop. And they are also great because then you have really good references for when you start applying for jobs or applying for grad school, and just like really great on advice and wisdom when things get tough. And then just have like a variety of activities for fun and relaxation, because wildlife and conservation can be really tough and really tiring, just because, you know, you're sort of working with a lot of different plants and animals, and sometimes it can be a lot of long days, and it can be a lot of like long hours in heat or snow or rain. So definitely have sort of some interests, or making sure that you're taking care of your mental health and are not burning yourself out when you're kind of chasing after your goals. And I would say that that is sort of my parting advice to you. And I'd be happy to answer your questions when we do questions. Thank you. Stop sharing. There we go.
Soumya, that was amazing. Oh, there we go. And now it's time for our 3-minute break with SCOCO, and you'll get to hear all about the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge.
Karina, we can't hear you. Hello.
Now we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, guys. Not the Cleaner Contra Challenge, but the Sustainable Leaders in Action. I don't believe I introduced myself. My name is Christina. I am part of the graphics design team, or the graphics design intern, and made with a few other members of SLIA. We created these slides for you. This is just one part of SLIA that you're able to do. A little bit more is that this Climate Careers Chat is brought to you by SLIA, or Sustainable Leaders in Action. We are the youth-led organization of Sustainable Contra Costa, and we consist of high schoolers and college students who are all passionate about the environment. We've done many awesome projects like, of course, the Climate Careers Chats, Actions of the Months, where we choose to practice a specific sustainable action and spread word of it, and work with government policies for sustainability as well. Our goal is to promote sustainable practices within our community to ensure a greener future and empower the next generation of climate activists. So if you're interested in doing graphics, anything like that, or anything of the above, or joining SLIA, we'll have a little bit more information in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And now we will talk about the long-awaited Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge. This is a free platform that allows, with over 80 actions that allow you to establish sustainable habits in your home. I'll show you what those actions look like on the next slide. But our progress to date for the Cleaner Contra Costa Challenge has been great. We are 77% of the way towards our goal for saving CO2 by the end of 2023. We've almost reached our goal of 5,500 households signed up for the challenge, and we have saved about almost $500,000. So that's pretty cool. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of different actions on the challenge. So on your top left, we have the different categories of actions. So if you're looking for something to be energy smart in your home or wasting less, right here on the bottom right, we actually have the Be Energy Smart category. And as you can see, there are different options and different levels of, there are different levels of difficulty, but these I'll say easy. So some are easy things that you can do, like turning your light off when you leave a room to save energy. And if you're interested in learning more about the activity, these actions have step-by-step how-to guides to help you get into the action and learn more about it. And the platform provides resources. That's what's on the bottom left of your screen, and that is for based on where you live, and it will show you available resources that are specific to where you live.
Okay, everyone, now we are going to hear from our second panelist, Christina Schwandt, the Curator of Education at the Lindsay Wildlife Experience. Christina will now read her fun facts out to you, and go ahead and type your answer out in the chat for our next round of 2 Truths and a Lie.
All right. Hello, everyone. Let me read those out to you. So the first one is, I lived in a tent on Catalina Island, helping the Catalina Island Conservancy with invasive species removal and trail maintenance. I've taxidermied a grizzly bear. Or I make stained glass based on nature. So excited to see what you think.
See the responses in the chat. Kyle has said the first one. And he's asking what animal skull that is, Christina, that you're holding up in the photo.
That is a polar bear skull.
That's cool. And Stacy says the second one, the taxidermied grizzly bear. Yes, I'm wondering about that too. So is Diana. And anybody else, type your answer out in the chat. Christina will tell her about her experiences soon. Raincel said the second one. Heidi has also said the second one.
Christina, which one is the lie?
Well, I guess you all guessed it. It is. I have not taxidermied a grizzly bear. However, I have assisted a volunteer in making a phallus for a taxidermy grizzly bear because his was broken. So didn't taxidermy one, but have made a clay one for a taxidermy grizzly bear, a clay phallus, that is.
Christina, tell us more about the tent. We all had questions and Kyle definitely asked about that.
Yeah, I also did AmeriCorps, which I'm going to talk about later. So yay, Soumya, didn't know that plug was coming, but I'm bringing it up too. And for 2 months, I lived in a tent on Catalina Island, working with the Catalina Island Conservancy, helping with things like invasive species removal, as well as trail maintenance and just general park maintenance. It was actually a pretty nice tent. I will say there was a bathroom. Didn't have to go in porta potties. So that was good. But it was pretty scary. Some mornings I'd just be like brushing my teeth and I'd be like, oh gosh, there's a bison behind me. I should slowly walk away. So yeah.
Okay, I think we can move on to our next presentation. Take it away, Christina.
So I'm just going to share my screen really quick. All right. Oh, I'm going too far. Okay, makes sense. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Schwandt. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the curator of education at the Lindsay Wildlife Experience. If you don't know what the Lindsay Wildlife Experience is, you haven't been to us. We are a wild animal hospital. We treat wild animal patients, mostly native, with a few exceptions. And we're also a wildlife museum that focuses on native wildlife. And I'll get more into what I do later. I'm kind of going to go in the opposite direction as Soumya and just kind of give you a timeline of kind of my career and some pivotal moments for me. And you'll notice kind of throughout my career, there's some like general themes around environmental education, as well as museums. I've worked a lot with museum collections, as well as museum exhibitions, and a lot of nonprofit management as well. So yeah, excited to share with you guys. So I actually grew up in Panama City Beach, Florida, which if you do not know where that is, that's completely okay. I'll paint a scene for you. It is basically on the panhandle of Florida. It's a small little beach town, has those crystal white beaches made out of ground up quartz crystal, the sand is, and it's on the Gulf of Mexico with those beautiful emerald waters. I was very grateful to have grown up there. I really liked it. As a young age, I was always interested in wildlife. Actually, at this house right here, the neighbor next to me actually had grass. They didn't have these little pebbles that we had, and they had this beautiful magnolia tree right in front. And it was the best place to find roly-polies. So I would always find myself going over into her front yard, and thankfully she was a very nice lady and eventually made friends with me. And I would go over and look at the roly-polies and she would bring me lemonade. But I was the weird kid that was always interested in wildlife. I was the kid that on the playground, instead of playing on monkey bars or on the swing set, I was off like looking at frogs in the corner. And to me, like that was the best thing that I could be doing during my recess time. I was really grateful to grow up with really supportive grandparents. They supported my curiosity in both wildlife, but also in art, because that was also something I'm very interested in. My parents grew up with very little means. So they really wanted their kids to not have it be as financially insecure as they were. So they really pushed me and my siblings towards the traditional careers you would think of, like being a lawyer, being a doctor. But I always knew like that wasn't something that I was into. So I was really grateful to have grandparents that would take me on RV trips to different parks and that would take me to the aquarium and really supported the things that I was interested in. And I know maybe not everybody has that. So if I could impart like a piece of advice to anyone, it would be like definitely have agency and choice and in what you're doing with the rest of your life, and be happy that people want the best for you, and they want to give you advice on what to do, but also like listen to your own internal compass, kind of decide what you want to do. With that said, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do. So after high school, I actually did AmeriCorps. Similar to Soumya. AmeriCorps has a couple different sects. I joined one called NCCC, which is where you're in groups or teams of about 10. And you basically get to travel around the United States, working with different nonprofits, helping with things like urban and rural development, environmental stewardship, and infrastructure improvement, things like that. I had 4 main sites that I helped out at. One of them was the photo in the left that was in Helena, Montana. And there was, the city had a high pine beetle breakout, which was killing a lot of the trees. And what that was doing was putting the city at a really high fire hazard. So if a fire was to happen, the whole city was at risk of burning. So we aided in fuel reduction, which is basically, in a sense, a fancy word for saying we cut down dead trees. And it was really fun and really meaningful for me. I also, this is the time where I worked in Catalina Island, and I did that in invasive species removal as well as trail maintenance. And then I also worked at SLIA Park environmental camp as a camp counselor, which is in Pollock Pines, California. And that was really fun, getting to bring kids on like nature hikes, night walks. A lot of them had never like hiked at night before or had been hiking without lights. So for me, this was a really pivotal moment for me because I was getting experience in all of these careers that I didn't know existed. And I was really getting a chance to explore kind of the possibilities of what I could do. It was also my first real experience working with nonprofits, and I found a lot of meaning in that, like getting to see the difference I was making and getting to, connect with communities kind of around the United States. So that really followed me, I'd say, throughout my career. So I had to go back to school, had to get an education. I ended up deciding to get a bachelor's in art history, and during that time, my professor had actually recommended that I get a certificate in museum studies. I actually really ended up liking that. I had an internship at a local gallery, and that gallery was really a safe space for a lot of the community. It was also like a way to kind of gather around ideas and movements, and it was very underfunded. So there was only one staff person, which meant me as an intern got to do a lot of things. I ended up kind of taking on a leadership role, helping train other interns and volunteers, as well as like helping with their annual art auction and running a museum store. So I kind of, for me, this was an aha moment, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I really, really like this work. So I ended up getting a master's in museum studies from the University of San Francisco. And through my coursework, I kind of realized there's a lot of ways and places you can go within museum studies. But I realized I was really interested in collections management, which is managing the collections that museums have, keeping them in good conditioning, storing them in the right environment, and also helping with exhibitions. And that was the second thing I was interested in, also exhibitions. So that interface of where individuals get to really experience the museum, the collections that they have, and the things that they're trying to accomplish and connect communities to. I also, during this phase of my life, got extremely interested in green museums and the intersection of where social and environmental movements intersected within museum operations. Because to me, museums are not neutral, like not making a statement is a statement. So I got very interested in that and ended up writing my thesis on sustainable collections management practice. which basically means in caring for these objects for future generations, we are not in turn destroying the environment for future generations. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. During grad school, I was interning at a few different places. I was at the National Japanese American Historical Society. I was helping with managing their collection, mostly digitizing their collection onto their database, as well as helping curate an exhibition and design an exhibition at the Thatcher Gallery, which was about art in Japanese, American Japanese internment camps. I also interned at the California Academy of Sciences, and I was in the exhibition department there. I helped a lot with, they had a new database that they had developed for things that were on exhibits, because the exhibits department themselves wasn't managing the collections. They were getting them from the geology department. They were getting them from the vertebrate zoology department. So they had to manage the things that were on exhibition while they were in their care. So I was helping kind of develop the database to put all of that information, as well as helping with practical things like inventorying. In this photo here, I'm doing light monitoring. Because light damage, if you don't know this, it's cumulative and it's non-reversible. So it's really important to factor that into objects if you're trying to, keep them intact for future generations. And I also helped a lot with things like pest management. So for me, it was really exciting, these experiences, to put all of these things that I've learned in school and use them in a practical setting. I also worked at the Salvation Army of Alameda County. This was a really big step in my career because it was my first real management and leadership role. I was the director of volunteer services for 5 sites throughout Alameda County. And I helped put together pretty much a volunteer plan, because they didn't have one before, for all of these very different sites. So they had a family shelter, they had an adult rehabilitation center, they have food pantries. They also have PG&E assistance programs. So I had to kind of meet with all the managers of all these different sites and figure out, what was the right volunteer for each of these roles, and then recruiting for those volunteers and placing them, and really getting to see the impact they were making in these pretty small institutions. So that was something I really enjoyed. I ended up staying kind of in volunteer services and started working at the American Red Cross in Palm Desert, Coachella Valley area. And there I was helping with mostly disaster related volunteers, but also they do services to the armed forces. So I helped with that as well. No blood. It was in my area, so I didn't do any blood volunteers. But I really enjoyed that. During this whole time that I was working at other nonprofits, I was still volunteering and interning and being involved in museums, because it was something I was really passionate about. But I realized at one point, I wanted to be back in the museum fields. So I moved on back to the Bay Area, and I started working where I work now, which is the Lindsay Wildlife. Again, if you haven't been to the Lindsay Wildlife Experience, I hope you come and visit us. We are a wild animal hospital. We focus on native wildlife. We have a natural history collection of about 16,000 specimens. So those are skulls, taxidermy specimens from vertebrates, invertebrates. We also have geology, paleontology, and a botany collection. And we use those a lot as educational tools for programs that we give, but we also use them for exhibitions and things of that nature. We also have a live animal collection of about 65 animals. And I like to say we're different than a zoo, because our live animal collection is only with us because they couldn't survive in the wild. A lot of them came in through our wild animal hospital. They were injured in some way to the point where it was deemed they wouldn't be able to survive in the wild, or a lot of them came in because well-meaning people decided that this wild animal would make a good pet, and they were wrong. Wild animals don't make good pets. So eventually they surrendered them. They either surrendered them through Fish and Wildlife, or they got confiscated. And that's why they're in our care today. So we get to use these animal ambassadors that we have really as ambassadors to their species, really sharing messages with people about how they came into our care, and how, as wildlife neighbors and concerning citizens, we can learn from these mistakes and better coexist with wildlife around us. And with that said, we also have a wild animal hospital. We treat wild animals for free of charge. We do only accept native animals with a few exceptions, and we serve about 6,000 animals a year. That's how many patients we get. So it's actually quite a lot. Our goal for the hospital is always to return those animals back to the wild. I personally work on the museum side. I'm in the education department, and we get a lot of our messaging from the hospital. We have this amazing resource that's saying what's happening in our community, how is wildlife getting impacted. So we use a lot of the messages that we get from the hospital in a lot of our programs and a lot of our messaging to really hopefully make a positive impact in our community. So like I said, I work in the education department, and our education department kind of does what a typical education department does and a little bit more. So by that, I mean any daily programs that you see if you're coming to our museum that are kind of hosted throughout the day. That's what my team's doing. We also do school programs out to schools, or if they come to us for field trips, we do hikes. Soumya said we do newt hikes. So if you want to see newts safely, you can come with us on a hike. Those are over right now since the seasonal mating is finishing up. Well, we have tarantula hikes coming up, pollinator hikes. We also do things like camps, things of that nature, but the education department also does non-traditional education things. So we actually also manage that collection I was telling you about of 16,000 specimens. We use a lot of those. We have a teaching collection that we use for really letting people see things up close and touch them and, kind of connect with things in a personal way. Maybe if they can't touch the animal, you can't touch a bird, they're not gonna like that, but you can touch a wing to kind of feel the difference. So we use them as educational tools. And we also have a permanent collection that we use for exhibitions as well as scientific research. And then lastly, we help a lot actually with exhibitions. So that's one of the main things that I get to do is exhibitions. And we, of course, work across departments, working with our animal encounters team, which is the people that oversee our live animal collection, as well as our wild animal hospital and any fabricators we may be working with to really create meaningful experiences around different topics, kind of based on the season. So I did not start off as the curator of education. Unfortunately, they weren't just like, here you go, take the job. I started off as the education registrar. So what I got to do was basically being the public interface of any questions people had about the education offerings or education programs. I also managed the natural history collection I was talking about, which for me was super exciting because this was like what I loved. This was a collection that hadn't been cared for in a really long time. So I got to spend a lot of time with this collection and really get it kind of back to its former glory, I would say. This polar bear that my coworker is helping me move on the right, it actually came in from Alone with a pretty mangled face. It was like its skin was hanging off. And I got to work with a volunteer taxidermist to get him back and beautiful and back on exhibit. And he is now on display in our downstairs area. I eventually started creating a lot more exhibitions since I've had these beautiful specimens that were back to their former glory. I started creating a lot more natural history exhibits and working with the animal encounters team to also feature our live animals. And slowly I got promoted and became what I am now, which is the curator of education. I now get to mostly manage my team of 9 people and really help them. They get to write the programs and I help them and guide them with content creation or how do we make things more interactive or more engaging for students or teachers. I also get to work a lot with our grant makers. I've been writing a lot of grants or reporting on grants, helping people who wouldn't normally get to come through us, like Title I schools, helping create grants and avenues for them to be able to visit. And of course, I get to make exhibitions, which I'm doing right here in the middle. It's me with a bandsaw, of course, with safety glasses, safety first. And I'm making the base of actually a diorama that's on display on our exhibit hall. And lastly, me and all of my lovely educators get, of course, to work with our animal ambassadors because they're a really big part of our institution. Like I said, a lot of them came in through the hospital, and they all have these amazing stories that we get to share with people on not only getting to see their species up close, but getting to learn about how to best cohabitate with these animals because they are an important part of our ecosystem. So I feel very grateful that I get to do all these things that I do every day. And I hope that all of you find your path, if it's organically or inorganically like mine was, however you get there. And now I would like to share with you some engagement opportunities. So we do have some teen programs at the Lindsay Wildlife Experience if you are interested in being involved. We have the Outstanding Wildlife Leader Program, OWLS for short is what we call it. It is a year-long program for teens aged 13 to 18. They get to learn a lot of different tasks. One of the main ones is animal husbandry. They are the main keepers for some of our domestic animals. They also learn public speaking skills. Here they are working, and of course get to work with our animal ambassadors as well. So here they are working with one of our gopher snake ambassadors, interpreting for a program that they lead. And then lastly, they get a weekly lesson plan on different conservation topics. So they can really explore the kind of world of conservation and all the different avenues that people can go down it. We also have the Keepers in Training program that we call the KITS. That is another year-long program, and that's more animal husbandry related. So that's working a lot with our animal encounters team, working with a lot of our ambassadors, and just the daily care and maintenance of our animal ambassadors and making sure they're getting those enriching lifestyles that they deserve. We also, and for those two programs, I should say there is a small fee, but if that's not something that's available to you, we do also have scholarships. It is a pretty competitive program, so if you're interested, please read about it on the website and fill out that application to the best of your ability. We do have volunteer opportunities as well. Most of them are 18 and over, but our wildlife hospital does accept anyone over the age of 16. So that's another way you could get involved with us. And we have internship opportunities. We take a lot of pride in our internship opportunities. So we really make sure people are learning life skills that they could get a job afterwards with. So yeah, those are a few ways to connect with us. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really happy to be here and answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you so much, Christina. Now we will conclude the program with our Q&A session where you guys, the audience, can submit questions using the Q&A function. So when you do submit a question, indicate whether your question is directed towards Soumya, Christina, or both. And once the questions start coming in, Rachel, go ahead and start us off.
Guys, this is my favorite part of the Climate Careers chats because you guys get to be interactive with it. Now, let's see. Sometimes people do put it in the chat. Try not to do that just because it makes it a heck of a lot easier in the Q&A for you and for us. It's overall a lot easier. And also, we can answer it, like type it in and answer it here when you put it in the Q&A. So I recommend that quite a bit.
I see one in the chat from Leander, I think for Christina, asking what does NCCC stand for? So.
Yeah, that was the AmeriCorps question. I think that SACT is specifically the National Civilian Community Corps. Don't test me on that, but I think that's the answer.
I have a question for both panelists. What has been the thing that you've enjoyed working on the most?
I'll go ahead. That's a very hard question. I feel like that's a trick question. I love everything I get to do. For me, I really love working on exhibitions because I feel like it is it's just a really, really rewarding experience to create interactive ways and meaningful ways for people to connect with topics and learn about them in like maybe a non-traditional way, and getting to see people leave like, oh, I didn't know that before, or inspired. So I really enjoy that.
For me, yeah, it is a really hard question. I would say that I guess for me, the most meaningful thing is to be in urban spaces, or to be in spaces where essentially native plants and animals could get hurt or need to be relocated or things like that, and being in that position to be able to relocate them or protect them. And I think that is what really makes my job very interesting, because I do get to see a lot of different types of animals, and so that's kind of what makes it really special for me. And I think it's hard because I think it's sort of like that, sort of like Christina's talking about, where it's like you're there learning about all these animals, but you're also trying to educate people around you. And for me, it's more informal, whereas I'm like working with people, with a lot of different types of people, and trying to educate them about the animals that are around. And I think it leads to really interesting conversations, because you meet with people in all walks of life, and you know, sometimes you're able to have a cool conversation with them, and sometimes you're not, and that's all right, because I think that's kind of part of it, where it's like you're sort of there as a resource, and you you should definitely, like for me, I definitely enjoy being that resource for people. Yeah.
We have some questions in the Q&A now. Thanks, guys. For both of you, Kyle is in college, and the AmeriCorps does seem kind of interesting. Are there any requirements, or do you have to have some strong like outdoorsy background or handyman knowledge before you get into that? How about Christina? Would you like to go first?
Sure. I don't believe you need any specific requirements. I think it depends on the one that you apply for. There's, like I said, the NCCC, and then they also have like what they call VISTA, which I do not know what that stands for. So please don't ask me. I think they also have like Conservation Corps. So there's very different sects, but they're kind of meant to give you experience. So you definitely don't need experience. Mostly, I would say you need a strong interest. I'll let Soumya speak more to it.
Yeah, I think I did a little bit of a different thing, where I had switched from a full-time job into AmeriCorps. And so I did something called it's called EPIC. It was Emerging Professionals something. But essentially it was like, oh, you're kind of breaking into a different field, different careers. So this is like the first step in that kind of career. And for that, I did have some requirements of like, hey, you should be able to hike, or you should be able to carry 20 pounds, or be able to sort of be willing to work in like rough terrain environments, or doing restoration works and stuff like that. So that was like kind of the qualifications, I would say, but that wasn't really like, you didn't have to know all of those things to do what I did. And I think for a lot of different programs in AmeriCorps, you don't have to have any experience, nor do you have to have like any sort of like hiking experience, or any sort of like I don't know, upper body strength. I'm not sure. I think a lot of it is just sort of like, are you interested, and are you willing to be out in these rough environments and kind of think on your feet sometimes. And so I think they have a lot of different programs for a lot of like different types of people. And I believe there'll be some links that will be sent to you. And if you do have questions, I'm sure Christina and I would be happy to answer them as well for any specific listings and stuff.
Thank you. And yeah, we got you guys with those links. They're coming up real soon. Oh, my Zoom is doing that thing again. Rohan, would you like to take the next question?
Yes, I will. So from Diana, she asked a question for both of you guys. You guys said some good things about what you guys do, but what are some negative things about what you guys do? And have you ever had a time where you doubted what you did, or thought that it wasn't for you?
I can start with this. Yes, 100%. And I think that if you've never doubted a career path, then I admire you, because I think working in wildlife and working in conservation has been a bit of like, it's been so rewarding, but also it is a lot of long days, like I've mentioned before. A lot of it is like, oh, sometimes you're just out with crews in the middle of nowhere for 12 hours a day. And that is your life for maybe about 2 to 3 days a week. And that sometimes can be it can be tough, and it can be tedious, and you really have to make sure that you're still paying attention, even if you're having those long days. Because even if you're not seeing something for 8 hours, you might see something for an hour out of those 8 hours, and you have to really pay attention to that. So I think the negative aspects of it are that it's essentially, it's still, for me at least, it's still a job. And so you have to make sure that you're still being professional. You're not, if you're feeling burnt out or overwhelmed or anything like that, and to make sure to communicate that and stand up for yourself. And I think a lot of it too is that what's something that I have encountered is that there's the resources that you look for whenever you're trying to get opportunities. Like this resource that SLIA is putting on is really awesome. And I wish I had this when I was trying to look for my career path. But things like that, it has been a little bit more difficult for me, because I was like, oh, I don't really come from a community that encourages this career path. And so I had to sort of find my own resources, and that was a challenge. And so finding those resources, finding them in a way that is, widely available, finding programs that are accepting many people, that I think is tough. And that will be a bit of a challenge that will take a lot of perseverance on your part to keep applying for things, keep looking out for opportunities. But I think that in the end, for me, it's been really worth it, because it's been kind of like the most fulfilling kind of job that I've had. And it's been really fulfilling to be able to work with animals in this sort of way, and work with the kind of regulatory side, the government permit regulatory side of things as well, to see where it is that we need a systemic change versus, what we do on the ground, and how does that need to be changed to make sure that we are benefiting the animals, but we're also benefiting organizations that work to protect these animals and plants, and also not burning out people that are also going to be working in the field doing this job. So that's a very long answer, but yes, there are negatives, but I think it kind of comes down to how much do you think it's worth it to you for the good parts of the job, because everything's going to have a good part and a bad part to it.
I would definitely agree. Yeah, of course, everywhere has a good part and a bad part. For me, it's really hard. Working with animals, you grow a relationship with the animals, at least for the animal ambassadors, because you're working with them every day. So in the animal zoological fields, there's a thing called compassion fatigue, because a lot of people who work in the field are very compassionate and very empathetic. So when an animal passes, because they have shorter lifespans, some of them are only like 2 years, a year, not that long. you can take it really hard. Also in the wild animal hospital, if you can't save an animal. So, it's just remembering, I think the good things that you have with that animal and that relationship, and also being able to, value the time that you had and that animal had, being able to live its life longer in the Lindsay Wildlife's care. So I think definitely, taking time for yourself, and making sure, you're in a good space to be able to make those good decisions, and to be, kind of a rock for yourself and your team and the organization. So yeah, definitely hard times, but they're totally worth it for me.
Thank you, guys. Good question. Good answers. All right. The next one is from Renzel. This is a question for everyone. What is the most difficult decision you guys have ever had to make? All right, Christina, would you like to start us off on this one?
It's a hard question. I don't know how to answer that. I honestly think I would just say like career choices. Like, I struggled a lot with like, should I leave I want to be in the museum field and I really like this job, but do I want to leave this nicer, well-paying job for working back in the museum field? And that was a hard one for me to make. And it was like hard on the relationship I was in at the time because we had to move. But I totally don't regret it. I was really happy with that decision. But it was at the time, it was something, you really have to consider like all the possible outcomes because things could have not gone as great as they have for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think I had a very similar situation. There was a couple, I would say, as you like start leaving colleges, the amount of difficult decisions you have to make increase exponentially. But also I would say like when I was in college, what was difficult for me was to switch from the biomedical field into this field. And that was a lot of just like discussions and arguments with parents and sort of people in my life that question like, what are you going to do there? What's going to happen? Like, are you going to make any money? Are you going to do anything important? And that was difficult to explain to people, especially when you're trying to figure it out yourself. And then the second one was to switch from the biotech field, which was very cushy and well-paying, into starting to work for AmeriCorps, which was not cushy or well-paying, especially as a professional who had already been a professional for a couple of years. It was definitely a difficult decision, but I think it was ultimately very worth it because that's not an experience that comes by very easily in life. So yeah, difficult decisions, but totally worth it.
I'll take
For one,
the
I'm glad those decisions worked out for both of you. Rohan, would you like to take the next question?
yes, and as Rachel said, those were excellent answers for the past two questions. Moving on, Kyle just asked, did you find your internships or jobs through looking around for applying or networking with people to get you into places? Oh, and this was for both of you.
Oh, okay. Then did you find internships of that through looking around to apply or networking with people? For me, it was a lot of it was looking up stuff online. There was a little bit of networking going on to try to figure out where I should apply for jobs. And a lot of that was through like volunteer organizations, like volunteering with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, or volunteering with like local parks, and things like that. And like the other jobs and such, I didn't do, I guess I did one internship, but I didn't do a lot of internships in college. But the lab work that I did do in college, which gave me a lot of great experience, was through networking with professors and chatting with my class professors, or literally cold emailing people sometimes being like, hey, I'm interested in your lab. Can I join it or can I work in it? So yeah, a mix of both. Yeah, how about Christina?
Yeah, I'd say a mix of both as well. For a lot of my internships, I found those through connections, like professors I had, or they presented to our class. So I reached out about internships. As far as actual like jobs, a lot of those I kind of just looked around and saw like what I thought would be a good fit. I did notice in some of my interviews, like they knew people I had worked with in the past. So that's always a good connection to kind of get you in the door if they know people you know and they can give you a good reference. But a lot of, I would say my actual career has just been like trying to see like what was best for me and seeing what was out there.
Interesting. So it's like a mix of both. You got to know something and know someone. Nice. All right. So this question is more of a two-part question. It's one for each of you. Soumya, you mentioned your family wanted you to go work in the medical field. What did they think about it when you ultimately changed your career path?
Good question. They did not like it. It was not something that was very well received by them. And I would say partially it is their fault, because they supported me by driving me to San Francisco every day for 2 summers to go work in the San Francisco Zoo. And I was like, you know what? It's kind of your fault that I'm interested in this, because you helped me do that opportunity. But they weren't happy in the sense that they were unsure of how to guide me in those fields, and they were very worried, and it came from a place of concern and making sure that I was able to take care of myself and stand on my own 2 feet, and was able to kind of figure out a career path that would pay me enough to essentially be financially responsible, or financially responsible for myself. And so they were very concerned, and they were not happy about it. And I think over time, seeing all the different opportunities that I had, just sort of seeing what I was working in and the passion that I had in these different areas, they came around to it, and they always encouraged me to sort of do whatever I like. They from the beginning encouraged me to do what I had a passion in. They just didn't think that it would be this. So it was kind of interesting to see like, oh, well, if I am passionate about this, then that's what I should do, even if it wasn't the medical field. And I think that it ultimately has worked out. And I think that if you are passionate about something, you should follow it, and you should be smart about it. And I think that is what works out, because if you go in half-hearted into something, that just will not, that eventually you'll burn out, and it'll just be not a great thing for everyone involved. So definitely keep that in mind when you're trying to choose a career path. It's like, if you're going to do something and you think you're not going to enjoy it in practice, or you're not enjoying it in practice, then maybe reassess a little bit. But yeah.
Very good answer. All right, now Christina, you've worked with many wild animals. What was the scariest one you've ever worked with?
Yeah, so I will caveat that I don't work in the hospital. I bet they have some really cool stories that they could share with you, but I mostly work on the museum side of the building. So I get to see the cool animals from like the other side of the wall and the one-way mirror. And I get to really work with the people who work with them and get their stories to share with the public. But I do get to mostly work with our animal ambassadors, who, although they are wild animals, I mean, you have to study before you handle them. You know, there's signs of stress. So I think knowing when an animal's stressed out, you know, telling when a snake is shedding, you probably shouldn't handle it. You can be able to see these things because you're working with them so often. So really just listening to the animal too. If it's telling you like, today's not my day, I'm not going to participate, then just saying respecting that and picking another animal to potentially take out on a program. So I'm actually been very fortunate to not have, I would say, any like scary experiences, at least at the Lindsay Wildlife. I would say actually one of the scary ones I've had, I was like hiking with my crew. We were scoping out a hike. It was a very, very foggy day up in Briones, and it was actually with domestic cows. We had gotten way too close to, I guess I thought we were very far away. We got off the trail. We were almost getting lost because it was so foggy, but the mom thought we were too close and she almost charged my coworker. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible manager. I'm gonna get in trouble. Thankfully, she like stopped right before. She just like tricked us out and we were like, let's get out of here. We didn't get that lost. So that was one of the most recent scary ones. So wasn't even that wild. Yeah.
Those are some interesting stories, guys. So I think we missed the question from Heidi, and that was, what was the best opportunity or favorite thing you guys have learned in your line of work? And I think that's addressed to both of you guys again.
Yeah, I can start. Was the best opportunity or favorite thing? I would go with favorite thing that I've learned in this line of work. I think I would say the favorite thing that I have learned, which I was super surprised about, was the caveat that anthropomorphizing animals is it's not that it's not correct, but it's not accurate. But it is interesting to see the behaviors that snakes and frogs and salamanders have and newts have when you either are handling them or are just around their environment. And for me, the favorite thing that I learned is anthropomorphizing the characteristics of different types of snakes that we found and figuring out which one was feisty and which one was chill and calling them funny, cute names all the time. And so I think that was the favorite thing that I've learned, is just going out and seeing like, hey, it's a snake, but it's not that scary. And you can learn to handle a snake correctly from someone who's a professional, but you definitely don't need to be scared of them, and learning how to communicate that to people who are scared, to see, you know, what their reactions would be if you just held up a snake to them, or like, hey, like this is this animal and look at it and it's so pretty and look at the colors, or look at the way that it behaves and things like that. So I think that is a favorite thing that I've learned.
Yeah, for me, okay, what was the best opportunity or favorite thing you learned in this line of work? It's really hard. I have so many things that I enjoy. For me, I mean, I really love our natural history collection. So for me, a really good opportunity and working with it and working with the amazing volunteers that we have is I got to learn a lot about caring for and sprucing up taxidermy, I would say, like cleaning up their feathers, brushing them out, just making them look presentable, because they're here as a public resource to teach people about their species. And for me, it's important that we respect the fact that they're there, and want to make them look as realistic as possible so people can actually study them and get up close. So I think I was really happy to work with a lot of the volunteers that I've got to work with and learn things like how to pin entomology specimens, how to, you know, clean off a taxidermy specimen, how to, you know, really care for it in a way that preserves its integrity. So that's something I really enjoy.
If I can jump in really fast. audience members, if you have any final questions, please submit them. We have, it looks like 2 in the chat, and please add your last questions because we're going to start finishing up.
Thank you, guys. Okay, we got another question from Kyle. Christina, I believe it was you who worked in the California Academy of Sciences on an internship. What did that internship look like? What did you do?
Yeah. So I interned in the exhibitions department. So I did a few different things. Most of what I did was working on their database for the exhibitions department. They didn't have a database before, but they had to track all of these objects from different collections and make sure they were being cared for. So I helped, I actually got to do some code on it, which was cool. I got to help develop it. I got to help prepare data to be imported and import some of the data. I got to go out on the exhibit floor and inventory things and kind of make sure that they were still in good condition, which was really fun, like trying to find everything that was out there because the Academy is so big. And it was only for the natural history collection stuff, I would say, so not the non-living collections. I wasn't out there counting the butterflies in that area, but just the specimens. And then also just helping with like light monitoring and pest management. So yeah, it was really fun. And I got to go to their exhibits meetings too, which for me, it was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. They're like planning 5 years ahead. So it was a really great experience.
Are there any final questions in the Q&A or chat? Feel free to drop them and we'll wait for you guys. Okay, if not, I think we can move on with our slides.
Right, and this is the links we were talking about earlier. If you guys are interested in getting more information from the panelists, scan this QR code and you'll get a link tree with all of the links we've mentioned. It's really a very good resource. We'll give you guys a few more minutes to scan it. I think I'm going to do that myself. Look at this. Oh yeah. See, very, very informative. Okay. We'll give you a couple more seconds to scan that because it is really a great resource.
This will also be included in the follow-up email that we send you in the next few weeks. So this program was recorded and we're taking note of all of the questions you asked so we can go ahead and share this afterwards. Do you want me to do this one?
Go for it, Ellie.
Okay, so like we've been talking about, this program has been produced by Sustainable Leaders in Action. We are recruiting for new members and we have a recruitment event coming up on Saturday, March 25th. If you want to register for the event, you can register on the left with the QR code or right there with the URL. Otherwise, this has been really great. You're able to see all of the projects that SLIA works on, including this one. And I would just like to take the time to thank all of you who came to our program today. And thank you so much to Christina and Soumya who have just provided such great information and has been really cool. And also, thank you to all of the SLIA members who worked on this program. I have a list of you, so thank you, Rachel, Abigail, Mia, Rohan, Karina, Nina, Ritika, Stacy, and Samriti. Thank you for all of your hard work on this program. And again, thank you so much to our partners in this program, the Contra Costa County Library. We love doing this event and we look forward to doing more of them. This is the first Climate Cruise Shot of 2023, and we will be having 3 more. Thank you so much for coming, everyone.
As Ellie said, thank you so much for everyone. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining and listening. And also, once again, a huge thank you to both of our panelists for sharing a window into their lives. If you are interested in SCOCO, SLIA, or anything that we mentioned, these slides will be sent out in the coming weeks. And with that, we'll see you at the next Climate Careers Chat.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.